We have some interesting results here. A lot of people quite confident, and then there's the more uncertain views around, not really sure, and the clear no, there's not that many. But let's hear from someone who had a first-hand experience around this. Cecilie Fjellhøy, known from a Netflix series called The Tinder Swindler, will share her personal story to make sure that we all raise awareness about fraud tactics, red flags, and how to stay safe in the digital age. So welcome to the stage, Cecilie.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I have always loved true crime. I don't know how many else is with me on that. I don't know. Yeah, most of us do. And I never believed that I would be in one myself. Because as you've heard already, but yes, I am the girl from the Tinder Swindler. And how many have seen that documentary, just so I can see? Yeah, half. Yeah, maybe half of the room. It became a phenomenon back in 2022. If anyone would have told me, there's a lot of documentaries being made around the world, you know. And if I would have seen the changes that has happened since then, I would have believed no one about it. Because this story starts back in 2018. So already 7 years ago. And who was I at the time? We have this notion of what a fraud victim is. But I had recently moved to London to finish up my master in digital experience design. I owned my own flat, and I had been working in Norway for Husbanken, the ones who's from Norway might know that bank, creating applications for the most vulnerable in society. Both loan applications that know about digital identity, and I even won awards. Was kind of the golden child. I had done everything correctly in my life. But I was single. And what do you do when you're single and you're in a new country? I went on Tinder. And I was just procrastinating, actually. I was just on a Saturday swiping left and right, and who do I come over? This guy. Swipe right, unfortunately. And matched up with this dude, Simon Levive. And he was my type. And we met up very quickly the day after. And we went up for a coffee. And he's told me he was the CEO of a big diamond company. And his job was to wine and dine clients, you know, signing contracts. And he was funny and he was attentive. And after a while, he said, but I really like spending time with you, you know. And I was like, yeah, me too, you know, when you really like... You like that element of it. But then he says, do you want to join me for like a business trip? We're going to Bulgaria. And I was like, damn it, I was going to finish up my master thesis. I had my laptop with me. And he said, well, you can do it on the plane. And I was like, damn it. And I'm always this type of person who would rather regret something I did do than didn't do. And that was always the issue here. So I said yes to that. And when you enter Simon Levive's world, you don't only meet him, but you meet a plethora of people. So I called a lot of this immersive theater. So when we went out into the hotel lobby, all of these people were waiting for him. 3 drivers, his business partner, his bodyguard, Peter, which you will hear more about, his daughter, he had a daughter. I met a personal assistant. Later on, I met friends. All of these were telling me great things about Simon. The mother of the child said that he was such a great dad. And later on, I found out that she was one of his victims from Finland, who put him in jail back in 2015. So she was in that car lying to me. And that's the thing when you enter his life too, it's a very quick commitment, you know. I went on a private jet on the first date. That is insane. Why did I even do that? There's another thing. But nice dinners, you know, diamonds. And he knew tons about diamonds too. He was talking about it all the time. So he was really read up. But there was a darker side to it. When we started dating, it started to become very prominent that he had enemies. And those were the competitors in the diamond business who were trying to make him stop from traveling and doing his work. So he was showing me CCTV of a break-in that he had in his apartment. He was showing me bullets in the mail that he had received, funeral flowers on his door. And these are just some of the messages that we were sending early at the time. So kind of something sinister was stirring, but he said, but I had a security team, and he had Peter, and everything was going to be fine. And I want to go a bit into the social engineering and the social manipulation that happens, because it was two faults here with him. We have love bombing and the grooming factor that I'm showing quite very early, and that he was full on with me. He sent me 100 red roses to my flat. He told me that he loved me always after 3 weeks, and I know that's a lot. But unfortunately for me at the time, I loved love bombing. So I was fully in that someone could love me after 3 weeks. That's the thing. And he came solely to see me in Oslo on a private jet, just to show me that he was a man of his words. And that was really important. But what happens as well with these criminals is that they're using isolation and urgency to get you to do what they want. So later on, it was becoming very clearly that they were setting me up to keep me off balance. He left me alone in Amsterdam. He said that his enemies have found him. And he said, well, I can't go, but they found you, Simon, you need to leave now. Peter was screaming on the phone while I was in the flat in Amsterdam. We had the attack in Copenhagen, where his bodyguard got a bottle on his head, and that actually happened. But he said, they're coming after me. When this is happening, he even got me to make my Instagram private, removing my last name, saying that they could come after me. And when this happens to you, when you really truly believe and trust him, and that this is what is going on, you will do a lot. So everyone's asking me, how did it happen? Like, he was a billionaire, he was on private jets, expensive dinners. How did you give, wrong choice of words, but anyways, how did you give this man money? The thing was not about money, it was about security. He said that the threats from his competitors have gotten even worse, and he was told by security team that he couldn't use his cards for just some weeks. Credit cards, they could see where he was in the world by the spend on them. You know, and he was asking me, can you do me a favor? And he sent me a voice message, and this is the transcription of it. And he's saying if I had an Amex, he could just use it for some time, travel incognito under my name, Cecilie Fjellhøy. You know, and it's not under my name, that no one, so he was secure. This point in time, I trusted him as my boyfriend. And he told me stories of him being the black sheep, and I felt I can't turn my back on him now. And it was such a small thing in the bigger picture. So what did I do? I took up an Amex. And he started, and that is actually the Platinum Amex. And by that, he got financial control over me very quickly. Just wanted to show how it was going on. How was I managing to get all this money? First in March, I had no credit history in the UK, so I had to call Amex all the time. Countless calls to them to get them to open up the card. And I was sending permissions to use of the card, and then I did the worst thing ever. He said, I can employ you at my company, LLD Diamonds. And I said, yeah, employ me, do that, because we need to raise the spend. I sent in those documents to American Express, and those, of course, found later on was fake. They're using our hands, they're using our actions so they get away scotch-free. When in the end, Amex said, no, we're not, we know that you're not the one using your card. What did I do? Continue to give him my MasterCard from Norway. And unfortunately for me, I had great credit history in Norway. Had a well-paid job as a UX designer. I owned my own flat. With a very well-built-out digital identity with Bank ID, I got really high loans paid out with very high interest. While all of this was happening, he was relentlessly sending me messages day and night. And this is just some of them. The pressure you're under as a fraud victim, you are not yourself. You're under coercion, you're under manipulation, you're under abuse. I didn't see it at the time. I thought, well, he can't help it, the situation he's in. But every time that card was blocked, I felt that he was in danger and that his life was in jeopardy if I didn't help him. I know it's insane to try to understand, but that is what I was feeling. I was so out of my mind that I even sent a complaint email to Amex when they decided to say, we know you're not the one using your card. Even sent that email to them, I said, I don't know if I want to be a customer with you. I knew I wasn't traveling around, and they knew that too. So everyone's asking, this spinning wheel, why do we keep going on? And I'm trying to use this analogy here. It's so difficult to jump off or stop it because it's spinning and spinning and spinning. And at the end of it, I'd taken up over 9 loans and lost over £200,000 in just 54 days. That's an insane, everyone, I know, it's an insane amount. And the worst part, these were loans. And I had creditors after me. So I wanted to show a bit how it was actually working. It's not to call anyone out, but I think I had almost all of the banks in Norway as my creditor. So as you can see how quickly it went. And with Amex, I got like £67,000 in just 3 weeks. So what was the warnings here? I got 2 warnings from my bank, one for the Visa card and one for the MasterCard. And in what grounds? On my main bank account, it was because I got in all these loans coming in, you know? And then I said, well, it's me, don't you worry. And with the MasterCard, I just want to show you the spend that he did on my MasterCard. It's an insane amount. And this is what social manipulation are doing, and this is what we're talking about. Well, it's your money, you know? We just have to let you use them. But this wasn't my money. It was the bank's money. In the end, it was me. So what happened? When did I get out of it? The 3rd of May, I spoke with a representative from the bank, and when I actually explained that I had a CEO boyfriend that was hiding from his enemies. Thank you. That is when, you know, she wrote immediately, this customer, you know, have been subject to social engineering and social manipulation, and we need to block everything. From the bank's perspective, is that since I didn't state or provide any indication that I was a victim of fraud while everything was going on, it was my own responsibility. It's very difficult to tell your bank that you're being defrauded if you don't know you're being defrauded. That is kind of my feedback to that. And a lot of people are then, when did you then realize, you know, like you just kept going and going and going, is when he turned on me. He had done he was working on a big deal, and he didn't manage to make it work. So then he started gaslighting me, said, well, you have me, well, I lost 73 million. You will appreciate some care, you know, that I hadn't been there for him. So that's when I sent an email to Amex and said that I was terrified. And 2 special security agents from them came to my work, and my manager was with me during this meeting, and asked, and I showed a picture of him, and they looked at each other, and they told me that this was a long-term fraudster. And I was the last string of 3-4 women. Everything came crumbling down, like everything that I had gone through. And I felt like I was drowning. I went back home to Norway. I wrote up all the loans, and thank God that I had a mom who was calling all of these banks, telling what happened, because I did not know what to do. I went to the police in Norway, and that's when I started getting threatening voice messages, and he even sent an email to my work email and says, you're trying to hurt me, you will get hurt. We know your friend's family, back off. And it was the we that made me scared. And this is what fraudsters are doing. They're either intimidating, re-victimizing, or they want you to join in on their con, because you're so desperate to get your money back. When I then talked to a lawyer who said, well, the banks might go after me, because of course, as you've heard from the story, I've done a lot of mistakes here. I didn't know what to do. I was driving on the road, and I was just thinking, if I just turned the car, it was a trailer coming towards me, and I could just end it, because I knew I'd lost my flat, I didn't have my boyfriend. I was questioning my sense of reality. It's done. There's no point. My mom then put me in acute psychiatric ward, and I was there for some days to be able to sleep, because I had not been able to sleep with the barrage of messages and calls from him for several weeks. But the relentless emails didn't stop. I was trying to ask for a delay on the down payment, because of course I started getting invoices, and all I got from the banks were like, they understand it was a difficult situation, but you just need to pay the invoice. One invoice were £1,000, and they knew about each other. I didn't know what to do. So when I was at the bottom here, I was like thinking, how did it go so wrong? And I have 3 elements in my story. It's the lending practices in Norway at the time. It was an influx of this back in 2017, 2020, when you didn't need witnesses anymore for when you took up loan applications. You know, ooh, digitalization, love it, you know. The credit card as well. that he could use my name all over the world. I thought he would be stopped, not a single one. Lending practices, this is the message I sent to him. I'm always scared how easy it is to get loans without security in Norway. No wonder people go bankrupt here. I sent that to my fraudster. And they will run you dry when they know. And with digital identities, since I've signed it, sole control, the cryptographic understanding of sole control doesn't mean it's real control. I was coerced. That was not me. So what happened in the end with me? Well, you have all of this when you have a lot of debt, right? So I was taken to court by 4 banks because I couldn't pay my debt. That was the most traumatizing thing I've ever had to endure after the fraud, that I had to stand trial as a victim. If you think of that in any other type of crime types, we will be thinking, what is going on here? I want to use Section 28, that I was under pressure and threats when I was signing these. But what happened was that they meant, I was in the press, but they meant that I should have realized I was being scammed. And again, this is enforcing this view in the public that this is my fault, a human flaw, that we are the weak link, that I was the one who did all the mistakes here. That kind of the scammer, we don't even remember him. And I think that is something that we should look much harder on what happened back in the day with fraud victims there. I was called naive, weak, dumb, and in love, but I was cunning as well. I've been hunting for the loans, and a bit into the gold digger trope that I would just wanted a rich boyfriend. And these are just some of the questions I got. Why didn't you just go in a bunker? Why did you believe him? You told us too late. The threats weren't real. You can't use Section 28. As a victim, you're up against so powerful entities, and you're just one individual. I had support from my family, luckily, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I can stand up here on stage and talk to you guys about this with no shame, because I'm not the one who should be ashamed of what happened to me. Unfortunately, I lost both my cases, and in the end, I had to file for bankruptcy in the UK, because I was taken to court. I was taken to debt collectors there by a couple of banks. Not to point anyone out, I'm just saying. What I'm saying is very difficult for a victim to fight in 2 countries. I can promise you that. And we were talking about money issues. I know how that feels like. And what about the police? I told you about that I was sending in fake documents, right? Well, unfortunately for me, the police decided to make me a suspect in the UK. Yes. So I had to go into questioning as a suspect, and that was horrible as well, that I decided to defraud Amex with Simon Levive. So there's several things here where we as victims, we are solely being held responsible. If you see in the Tinder Swindler, Simon Levive was in prison for some time, but he's had an early release back in 2020, and he's been out for 5 years continuing to defraud. His new thing was a meme coin in Dubai. So he's continuing everything. And why is this? Because what I feel a lot of is just looking at this as a financial act. Just some money lost. Victimless crime, right? Just some money. I call it a human act. They use the humanness of us that we need to trust. If you think about it, you're lucky if you hadn't met anyone that you haven't been able to trust. And we then go public, we get told as fraud victims that we deserve it. Because we were kind, good-hearted, loving, trusting. These are qualities we want in the people around us. And when there are research out there that are showing the similarities between domestic abuse and romance fraud, we need to look much harder and deeper into why we as a society talk to fraud victims the way we do. And there's actually a report from Norway, from Denmark, where I'm right now, where two of the studies total of 14 victims have committed suicide, and one had several suicidal attempts. So this is what I'm saying. When everyone is looking at the victim, we end up where we are. So what is justice then? I'm saying thank God we have the press. I decided to go to VG, the biggest newspaper in Norway, back in 2019. We made this. And then, of course, Netflix's Tinder Swindler. But the thing is that a lot of the time, these are the comments that we are being dealt with when we go public. Someone just loved seeing me cry on television for being the gold digger I am, or he's a magician, or you should hold a TEDx talk to men on how to treat women. Women can be damn stupid sometimes. Or I'm naive. It's not Simon's fault that I'm naive. So I have felt a lot like this a lot of times. Because I'm like, what is going on here, you know? But I decided to use that in a very healthy way, is to be on stages. I'm coming out with a book soon. And I started my nonprofit, Love Said, because I think it's so important to help victims of romance fraud and to be a think tank. I've been in front of parliament, I've been speaking to politicians, speaking to banks, you know. We all need to come together against who we should be against, and that's the criminals. So there have been a lot of great comments too. I know it's a lot of negative, but there are tons of amazing comments too. And those are the ones that I keep on with. And now, like, being Tinder swindled is a verb. I love that. That people are thinking more of this. This is not a relationship I want to go through. It's not even the money lost. They just don't want to meet this person. So if we go a bit into the lessons here, if you're from the Scandinavian countries, we've seen a lot of these bank ID misuse, what's been going on in the last years. And I had received tons of messages from Norwegian fraud victims who was as well taken to court, lost homes, have signs of PTSD. She's so exhausted, they can't fight anymore. The police won't help. There's nowhere they can turn. And back in 2019, I've had Tom Stove from Finance Norway say that this is just a temporary issue, you know, the digital signatures. And back then, that we are ill-equipped to meet the digital revolution. And now we're seeing it as a fraud that is a societal issue. And I'm very happy about that we've come to that point, because then we can also work together. But the thing is that in some banks still, they're saying that, but hey, it's his money, so he can just continue to do his thing when it comes to crypto fraud against elderly. We shouldn't look at this when these money are going to criminal networks. So what about the rest of the world? Like, I'm around the world, and I just wanted to show very quickly UK and Australia how they're doing it. Australia have decided to go on a holistic approach with the fraud scam framework, where they're creating their own national anti-scam center, and I'm all for it. And in the UK, they started with the Reimbursement Act, where it's 50-50 liability on the sender and receiver bank, and the Online Safety Act, because we need the government to step up. And we see as well that in the UK, they haven't seen an uptick in people, you know, taking less care or being defrauded more just because they get their money back, because nobody wants to be a victim of fraud. I can promise you it's not a fun thing. It's not. In the UK, we even have our fraud minister, and we're talking more openly about that social media firms should take more of a responsibility. And I love over there in the UK that we're doing a lot of interesting social media campaigns, or trying to have Santander has a Break the Spell team. There's tons of good things happening in this space, and I'm so happy to see. So I'm not being like overly negative about it all. And recently, banks and tech giants are coming together for live data sharing. And this is what I want. It's us coming together, because it shows and it proves that it works. It goes down when we do more preventative work. Because what I'm saying now, in the state of Norway, even the state are taking victims to court. And I'm saying that convicting victims is a gift to fraudsters. And that is why we're in the situation we're in. Because this is, I know we're going to talk about Gen I afterwards, this is what's happening. These are scammers in training groups, using deepfakes already to scam victims, and using AI to create nudes. This is happening already. So I'm saying key insights from Australia, which I love. Scams are a national security issue. It's not a consumer affairs issue anymore. So let's act in national interest and not in self-interest. Because language is power. A lot of times, these are just some headlines. I must have sucker written on my forehead. I was stupid. They fell for a scam. I'm always trying to say, when people are talking, did you fall for that, or we were tricked into? Rather saying that we were targeted. We're targeted by criminals who stole our money. And in romance fraud victims, we were actually abused. Because stigma matter. So let's make fraud prevention the new customer services, and let's come together. Share best practices and data quickly. And as I said, engage with victims. We have a lot to offer. Diversity. Let's come together and catch the criminals. Thank you.
Thank you. Just stay on stage, just for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Again, you know, I don't know what to say about that story. It still moves me. So, and thank you for telling your story, Cecilie. So,
sorry, guys.
Yeah, I will open up for very few questions. We have 2 to 3 minutes. If there is any questions from the audience to Cecilie, now you have the opportunity. It's difficult to see. Is there any questions?
I always love when I'm in Scandinavia. There's so few people.
It's after lunch also, right? But one quick question for me then. Do you see more people these days actually standing up, admitting they have been a victim of fraud? Or is it still, you know, a little bit of like, I'm not going to say anything around it?
I think because when we come out and we talk about either, you know, the French lady who was like fake, like with the AI Brad Pitt, or someone thought they were with Emma Watson, people laugh about it. You're a celebrity. So we still have all of these stories out there. So people are still, oh my God, how could you believe you're with a celebrity, you know? And that's become laughable. So I think that is kind of, it's so tough, because I think if people then see, oh, they're laughing about this, well, I shouldn't come forward then, you know, people would just laugh at me too. So I see a lot more. I think we're going towards that. I think the Tinder Swindler was such a big shift in that, to see the extent fraudsters will go. Like, I think it opened people's eyes, but I think we still have a big issue with the shame. And I think some things have been with where we have placed the responsibility before. And now we're coming a bit more of sharing the responsibility, and that's all I want. So
that's a step in the right direction.
For me, so much have changed, and like I think my story is just a very cautionary tale where everything went wrong. So this is not what happens to everyone, but I love when I go and I say, well, this happened and I think it's such a shame. I just don't want anyone else to experience what I experienced, and have that in the back of our minds when we talk about fraud. Think about the humans here, and that no one wants to become a victim of this.
It's about the people.
Yes.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you again.